Hello guys, I am back with another video today, and I'm not going to be playing games, I'm going to be reacting to this video. This is from Share My Story, so go check them out, and subscribe to my channel, leave a like. And we are watching I Ate Spiders to Eat to the shower with. I wonder why would you eat spiders? You can't shoot webs.
And had a dry sense of humor in the comics. I loved him so much, and he even had a beautiful girlfriend. I imagined being just like him in every way and hoped I could somehow make this become a reality. But as I grew up, I began becoming truly obsessed with this idea. Was there a way to change my life around and make it all better? Make myself a real-life Spider-Man? I began to wonder, to plan different options. It took me a while to actually come up with an idea I thought could work, but eventually it came to me. What if I began eating spiders? I know how crazy it sounds, but I figured there wouldn't be anything to lose and a whole lot to win. After all, if I didn't get superpowers, I'd simply be eating a few nasty bugs. People all around the world munch on insects, and nothing ever happens to them, so I knew it was safe enough. I was obsessed enough to want to try anything and everything to achieve my dream, so I was really determined. I would go outside and search for spiders at first, munching on every single one I found. At first, it was so disgusting, but it didn't take long to get used to.
The baddest thing is that, why doesn't he cook it? He doesn't really cook it. And I saw snails, and I wouldn't even dare to eat a snail, not even for $1 million. It's just cruel. Why would you eat a snail? Why would you eat a ladybug? Why would you eat spiders? You can't even get webs. And but at the end of this video, he doesn't get spider webs. I'm gonna be shocked if he has. Let's carry on.
The feeling and taste. After a while, honestly, I began kind of liking it. But honestly, between school and homework,
I just need to turn it down, guys.
I didn't have the time to search all over for new spiders to try. I would still grab and eat every single one I managed to find, but I knew there needed to be an easier, faster way to try new species. So I went online, and since you can basically buy anything online, I quickly found a few websites I could order spiders from. Boxes began arriving every few days, and I'd eat its contents with increasing frustration. Nothing was happening. It simply wasn't working. I figured maybe I should search for some sketchier providers. Maybe then I'd find the right kind of spider, one that hadn't been so well tended to in the first place. I ordered from a handful of different sellers and kept on sampling the incoming bugs. One day, a big package arrived. It was filled with a few spiders for me to choose from, and I was surprised to see that one of them was glowing lightly. Could it be that it was radioactive, just like the one Peter Parker had been bitten by? My heart was racing when I munched on it. But much to my disappointment, nothing happened. I was so depressed. I thought if any of them had a chance of making me shoot webs, it would be this one. I went to bed and fell asleep just about ready to give up. What I didn't know at that moment was that my life was about to change forever while I slept. I woke up the next morning feeling so odd. I wasn't sure what was wrong, but I felt a tingly feeling all over my body. I wondered if I had food poisoning or something like that from eating that glowing spider. I rushed to the bathroom, but realized I was feeling perfectly fine, except that my skin still seemed to be tingling. So I asked myself, maybe it worked after all. Maybe I had developed superpowers after all. I tried it, moving my hand just like Spider-Man does in the movies. And it worked! I shot webs forward and stuck against the wall. I couldn't believe it. I was so happy.
What?
Finally, after weeks of eating spiders, I had reached my wild...
What the heck? What the hell? like eating spiders right now. What? I never knew that was possible.
This dream. It was incredible, and I tried it several times just to check if I wasn't having a dream or hallucinating. But it was true. I was really just like Spider-Man. I'll be perfectly honest, though. I'm not a hero or anything of that sort. I don't fight crimes or use my powers for the greater good. I'm lazy, and I don't believe in that whole Uncle Ben stuff. With great power comes great responsibility, he said. But I don't want to risk my life and go around saving people. Mostly, I use my powers to grab stuff that's across the room from me when I'm feeling lazy and don't want to stand up, or to impress my friends. Speaking of my friends, they really freaked out when they discovered my powers. I told them all about my plans, and they had mocked me about eating spiders. So when I arrived at school and told them that I had gained superpowers, they laughed at me all over again. Of course, they didn't believe me. So I told them I'd show them after classes were over since I didn't want anyone discovering my powers. They were super skeptical and agreed to go to my house after school was over just to prove I wasn't lying. Imagine their surprise when after locking the door to my room, I turned around and shot a web from my wrist. It was so cool to prove them all wrong. My friends kept asking me to use my powers to help them out, and sometimes I agreed. They are my friends after all, even if they didn't believe in me at first. Thanks for watching. What superpowers would you have if you could pick and choose? Leave a comment and tell us all about it. And don't forget to subscribe and check out the...
I'm gonna eat spiders. Literally. That's not even possible. I bet that's fake. Because if it's fake and I eat spiders, I'm gonna be so mad. So I'm gonna do a bonus story. Gonna be... I married a nanny.
We are finally in TikTok.
Bye-bye, have a great day.
Hi, my name is Alan, and I married my nanny. I was raised by a widowed, overprotective father. My mom passed away when I was really young, and that affected my dad deeply. He had lost his wife and felt like he could lose me as well any second. He wouldn't let me go out after school, and he would be wary of any friends I made, worried they would be a bad influence on me. So I grew up in this bubble, where everything was pristine and safe, but incredibly boring and monotonous. I went to school, came back, did my homework, played by myself, and went to bed. The worst part about it all was that my dad wasn't even around most of the time. You see, my father is a very successful shop owner and a bit of a workaholic. He cares deeply about me. I'm not going to deny that. But at the same time, he was rarely in my life at all. That he needed to provide for me. But we had more than enough money to live comfortably without him working so hard. He lost himself in his job most of the time, and I respect his work ethic, but I still needed him around. So to make up for the fact that he was never there to protect me, he hired nannies. I didn't have any uncles, aunts, or grandparents, so it was always only Dad and myself after Mom died. I barely remember her at all. She got sick when I was 5 and was gone before I turned 6. There are still plenty of pictures of her around the house, so at least I get to know how she looked like. Mom was really pretty, and everyone says I have her eyes, which is nice. Every day when I got home from school, I'd be greeted by a nanny. Dad wasn't there, and I'd have some milk and cookies and then do my homework. Sometimes the nannies would keep me company and play games with me. Other times they would just look at me from another side of the room and read a magazine or something while they kept an eye on me. It depended on the nanny, and there were some I liked more than others. They kept changing since my dad didn't trust anyone for too long. As you might have guessed, Dad was a bit paranoid when it came to my care. He was certain something was going to happen to me at any given moment. He wouldn't let me cross the street alone until I was well into puberty, and would never let me go outside and play on my own. Going to sleepovers or parties was a big no-no, even if other adults were around. So you can imagine I had a really hard time making friends at all. I felt so isolated all the time. I would beg my dad to allow me to bring schoolmates over, but he rarely said yes. I could only do it if he was around, and he worked so hard that it rarely happened at all. He'd get home to have dinner with me, but by that time, I couldn't exactly invite a friend over. It was too late in the evening already. When I entered puberty, my dad took a greater responsibility at his job, as he opened several stores around the country. That meant he had to fly often to other states and leave me alone for several days at a time. That was when the nannies began spending a whole lot more time at our home, sleeping over often. Most of them were older, around my dad's age, and they were usually very strict and distant. He seemed to pick those kinds of nannies so they wouldn't be too permissive and allow me to get away with stuff he had forbidden me from doing. When I turned 15, I sat down with my dad to have a real heart-to-heart with him. I told him I felt I was old enough to take care of myself when he wasn't around, and that it was weird for me to keep having nannies. I asked him to let me go out with friends once in a while. He refused, which really frustrated me, but agreed that I didn't need professional nannies any longer. He could agree to hire someone a bit more relaxed, as long as I agreed to follow his rules. It was not what I had hoped for, but it was something, so I agreed. That was...
Oh, man, there's nothing to do on our phones. I don't have any fun games.
when I met Lisa, the love of my life. Lisa was 21 when my dad hired her. She was a college student and the daughter of one of his employees. She was incredibly pretty and had the most beautiful smile I had ever seen. I had just turned 16 a week ago and couldn't believe I still was forced to have a nanny, but having her around made it better.
It's my birthday.
We got
tomorrow.
along really well, and for the first
January
time in my
14th.
life, I didn't feel so alone. I would actually look forward to getting back from school. Before, I had to be all on my own, without friends and with a strict old woman who'd barely talk to me at all but keep a watchful eye on me. Now, I got to talk and laugh with the prettiest girl I had ever seen. I think it really was love at first sight. I could barely stop smiling whenever she was around. I still remember our first kiss vividly. We were sitting on the couch, laughing about some random joke, and she leaned in closer to me. I couldn't help myself and kissed her. I really expected her to get angry and scold me, but instead, Lisa kissed me back. It was incredible. I hugged her tightly and we began making out. My dad wouldn't arrive until much later, so we knew there was no risk of getting caught. Lisa was the most incredible woman I've ever met. She was studying to be a nurse, and she was incredibly smart and kind-hearted. I know it was wrong for her to have a relationship with me when I was young, and she was in charge of taking care of me. But she didn't do it to mess with me or my dad. We really did